There we go. Okay, hold the boat. I think that hopefully. Is everybody seeing a screen with a slide deck on it?
It's just black right now.
Okay, hold on.
It's like a white mouse or something moving across it.
I know. What is going
It's a black screen to
on?
me.
Okay, why presenter mode? Okay, what is happening to my Teams? Oh, I'm even in Chicago where I have really good bandwidth and I don't know what this issue is. Hold on. Okay, wait a minute.
Leave and rejoin. Just
There you go.
found sometimes.
Okay, there we go. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, hold on. Let
Got
me get where I was supposed to be a minute ago. There we go. All right, hold on. Now let me get all your little smiley faces up. And then let's get started. So notice that my title says taking the PL 300 exam. I love how Kevin put it as passing the PL 300 exam. So
I thought I got that from the Portland meetup, and that was the title
oh,
they used.
well, they might have said it too, but I always give the disclaimer, you know, it does not matter, truthfully, if you pass. My perspective that you're going to hear tonight is it doesn't matter if you pass or fail. Now, I know everybody's like, oh, I don't want to fail, and I get that, but we're going to talk about it. Okay, so first of all, this is a little bit about me. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. This is a second career for me. I was a facilities manager for many, many years and kind of landed into this space in the beginning of 2016 and really never looked back. You know, so I really have learned this stuff from the ground up. I don't have a database background, as some of the people in this call will attest to. I'm always asking, like, well, why does it do this? And why is that way? And, you know, so I'm really speaking from I speak to the Excel business user community mostly. I do deliver the PL 300 exams a lot. I mean, you know, the prep class from Microsoft. I've also delivered the DA 100 many times. So I have, you know, intimate familiarity with, again, what kinds of things are going to be on the exam. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I split my time between the Chicago suburbs and the Maine woods. I am right now in Chicago for a couple of weeks just to get some, you know, dentist, doctor, all that kind of stuff. And then we're heading back to Maine. And those are a few things that I like to do when I'm not in front of my computer. And you may notice that most of them either involve being outside or doing something with my hands, because I am not, you know, when I'm done for the day with my computer, I want to get away from it. So that's a little bit about me. Let me just also say that I do not at all mind being interrupted. So please feel free to interrupt with a question. And also for those of you who have taken these exams or passed them or failed them, please jump in and comment. When I delivered this in Portland, a lot of people were jumping in with their experiences and what they, you know, had, what their experience was like. So again, please feel free to do that. I am absolutely fine with that. It'll just be a much richer experience. And I truly do not mind being interrupted. I do it all the time. So turnabout is fair play. All right. So first of all, why certify? So this question, it really is important because you don't have to. You know, there are some heavy hitters in our group, you know, out there who aren't certified, who probably will never get certified. I don't think Adam Saxton is certified. I don't think Patrick LeBlanc is certified. I don't think Matthew Roche is certified. I mean, if you've got enough street cred that, you know, people know that you're an expert, you don't really need to certify. If you want to certify because you want that ability to say, hey, this proves that I know something, you know, feel free to do it for that reason, but just be aware that and I'm sure this is true in all kinds of industries, but I can only speak to Power BI. You're never going to know everything. You're just not. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to argue with me on that, but you're just not going to know everything. So even if you get a certification, it doesn't mean that your learning stops. I see Juan has got a question. I have the DA 100. Is it important to have the new one too? The DA 100 is the predecessor to PL 300. PL 300 is the newest one. So you can't get the DA 100 anymore. And so when it comes time for you to renew it, you're gonna take the PL 300. The difference is DA 100 was 4 days, and it covered a little bit more territory than the PL 300 does. PL 300 is slimmed down a little bit. Michael's question is, do we have to have cameras on? You mean right now? Is that your question right now?
I think you might mean like during the test.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. Yep,
Yeah.
hold that thought. Great question. We're gonna talk about that. All right, so again, you don't have to certify. It's not necessary. Again, just be very clear, you know, why you want to go through and take the exam. The next kind of question is, are you ready? Now, for me, this really gets to the question of what kind of test taker are you? So for me, oops, hold on. That didn't work quite right. What happened with my slides? There they are. They're all here and I worked on them. Oh, because I put this all the way. There we go. Sorry, guys. I'm going to pull a Kevin and readjust things right on the fly here because that slide is not in the right place. Oh my goodness. There we go.
Wow,
Oh.
I didn't know it was called pulling a Kevin. Now your camera slipped down and we see.
Oh yeah, that's okay. There we
Oh,
go.
that was you. Okay.
Sorry. All right, so back to this. Okay, so it really depends on what kind of test taker you are. So for me, I'm a just do it. Like I just take a test. Like I took, that's how I took the DP 500, knowing that I was not prepared for it. Like I just wanted to get a gauge of, you know, how where my gaps were, and I passed. So some of that has to do with test taking technique, which I am going to talk about a little bit. But it really does depend on what kind of tester you are. So my husband is the exact opposite. He's got to study for a year before he's going to sit down and take a test. And when he sits down to take that test, he's going to get like a 98 or a 99 or whatever the score is. That's like, you know, perfect. When I take a test, I'm going to usually just barely squeak by. But you know, a pass is a pass. And with my technique, I do fail. I mean, so it is one of those things that, you know, you have to be okay with that. And you have to be okay with, you're not a failure. And in fact, I would argue that if you are only ever taking exams that, you know, you pass with large margins, you probably are not stretching yourself. Okay. So again, that's really up to you and, you know, how much tolerance you have for it. But I know for me, I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, so I have to take these tests. I have to take at least one a year. And I just got into the habit of, okay, well, I'll take it. And if I need to take it again, I'll take it again. Now, to be fair, as a Microsoft certified trainer, I get 50% off, 75% off. So I'm not making huge financial investments in this. And that is something to be considered in when you think about this. But before you even get to that point, think about who are you as far as a test taker. If you've got a lot of test phobia, you probably are going to want to, you know, prep a lot so that you can feel really confident that you're probably going to pass. Okay, so again, it's important to assess your own comfort level with how much you know. I love this quote. It's from Michael Jordan, and basically, you know, it sums up my whole viewpoint, which is, hey, you know, do it. Just do it. And if you fail, you're really not failing. What you're doing is you're getting an assessment of, you know, where your gaps are. And so I encourage everybody to just take the exams. Again, you'd be surprised how often you will pass. But I'll talk about some of the techniques that I use, which again, nothing magic, just I'm just not a phobic test taker. So, first decision is, are you going to take the exam online or are you going to take it at a testing facility? So, I took my first couple exams way back in 2016. I took at a community college testing facility. And everything. Ooh, look at Daryl coming in hot. Michael Jordan was cut in high school. All right. I love that. Love that, because I always think about Abraham Lincoln, but because he failed a whole heck of or Grant. Oh my gosh, he failed at everything until he became, General Grant. So thank you for that, Daryl. So testing facilities, a lot of them closed up during the pandemic. I do not know if, how many have reopened. I stopped taking tests at the testing facilities. I started taking them online. I will go through what you have to consider if you're going to do it online in a minute. But that's the choice you're going to need to make is, are you going to go somewhere or are you going to take it online? And if you don't have facilities, testing facilities near you, then you're probably going to take it online. So again, just keep in mind everything I'm going to talk about is primarily from the online perspective. I think some of some of the challenges I'm going to talk about go away when you're taking it at a testing facility. But again, you have to see if you have any. I know some cities hardly have any. So again, it depends on the city and how has it recovered after COVID. So if you're going to take it online, number one, you need to be able to be undisturbed. Okay. You cannot have people coming into your room. You cannot have people interrupting you. Hey, can I ask you a question? None of that. So you have to be able to guarantee that you are undisturbed. Closed door, nobody knocks on it, nobody comes in, because that will invalidate your test. Another thing to consider is, do you have good internet? The DP 500 that I took last summer, I was having internet issues at the time, and I almost had to just bail on it. So be sure that if you're going to do it at home, that you've got access to good internet, because as you'll see in a minute, you have to have your camera on, you have to have your mic on. So there's just lots of reasons why you've got to have strong internet wherever it is you're going to take these. And you also have to have a space you can declutter. So what I used to do before COVID was I would go to my local library and I would reserve a conference room, which most libraries have, and then I would just close the door, put a big sign up on the door saying, taking a test, please do not disturb. And that was perfect because there was nothing in these conference rooms, so there was nothing I had to declutter. I took one of the exams during COVID and the library was closed, and I did it on my bathroom floor. I can tell you, I do not recommend that methodology. But I took it in my bathroom because I didn't want to declutter. Like my one wall in my dining room has all these books in it. Well, you cannot take an exam in a room that has a lot of books in it. You can't do it. So you need to have a space that you can pretty much declutter. So again, if there's not such a space in your house, then you may, want to think about going somewhere else.
And it's kind of important to point out that that's not just what they see on camera, because I know, like, when I did it, I was lucky enough my brother happened to be moving, and I didn't know exactly what was needed, but he had a lot of stuff packed up and put away. But they make you take pictures of up, down, and all around you, and then there happened to be a printer still next to where I was doing it, and then I had to show them that the printer couldn't be powered on or there was nothing on there. all these other things. I had to do some extra things for that before they let me start taking
Yeah,
test.
no, exact, Kevin, thank you so much for that, because yes, I mean, they will, go through this process with you where you will have to take pictures of your ceiling, of your four walls, of where you're
Mhm.
sitting. And if they don't like something they see, you have to clear it up. Okay, so.
Jessica, so are you saying that if you've got a bookshelf in the room, you've got to take all the books off of that bookshelf and put them into another room then?
They don't like books. I mean, I
Right.
can tell you that. So I mean, I can't
Well, does
say.
it depend on how close they are? Like, if they're like far away on the other side of the room, but if they're within reach, definitely not.
Yeah,
They're like 4 meters away?
I wouldn't even mess with it, Anthony. I
Yeah,
would try
okay.
first to get into it. That's why I took one in my bathroom, because there was nothing, I had nothing in the bathroom that I had to get rid of. Oh, yep, Sean's saying you have to unplug the monitors and show them unplugged. There you go. Yeah, I
if you
mean,
have multiples.
it's a process. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Online is convenient, but you need to have the right space for it. So before you sign up for that. So it's again, so Sheila says Shannon recommended hanging sheets on the bookshelves. Did that work for her, Sheila? Because I'd be worried that they'd be like, oh, well, what's behind the sheets? So
I think so. It was something she presented in a, similar Q&A like this before I took my exams, but just even the thought of doing that kind of stressed me out. So I used a facility.
oh, so you went to a facility. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you guys are all in Dallas near Sheila, then you have something at least within an hour or two's distance. So again, it's really up to you. Like I said, as long as I'm not stressed anymore by those kinds of tests, now I know what they need. I know what they need. I know what they're expecting. So I prepare ahead of time. I know where I am. I did have one scenario where I was taking it in a spare bedroom. I had to clear off all these bookshelves. And I closed the door and I put a sign on the door, even though my mom and my husband knew I was taking an exam. But I was like, reminder, don't knock, don't put your head in, don't do it. Well, I guess the poodles, my mom has two poodles, they don't read. So they came in and jumped on the bed, and I was positive they were going to cancel the test, but they didn't. So I was lucky about that. But anyway, so yes, you have to take steps. If you have to, for a facility, it's a little easier. You got to see if there is one near you. Again, not every city has an abundance of them. And then of course what the hours are. And I would always call and, try to understand what those logistics are. I have not taken one at a facility for a long time. So I can't really speak to that experience, but Sheila, it sounds like you took one. That was during COVID though, wasn't it?
It was during COVID. Yeah, it was the testing facility was at Tarrant County Community College. I'm on the Fort Worth side of the Metroplex, but Dallas may have a similar setup on that side.
I think
Yeah.
Dallas has many. I think Plano has it because I've looked at it before. So I think there's a few around the area.
Okay, so it sounds like you guys have options. Yeah.
Mhm.
So at least if you're in that area, you can for an at-home exam, you can reschedule up to 24 hours before the exam. I don't know about the test taking facilities and their policies. Do be careful though, because if you're using any kind of coupon that's given out by Microsoft, there are time limits on those. So if you end up with that's how I ended up taking the DP 500, because I got a coupon from Belinda Allen, who's part of our Saturday morning group. And then I went to reschedule it, and they were like, you can't reschedule this. So it's like, you have to use it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll just take the darn test. So again, just be aware that if you got it as a freebie or, something like that, it may have restrictions. So just be aware of that. Okay, so scheduling the exam. When you're doing it online, it's pretty easy. They give you a calendar in military time and local time. and you then schedule, and I've never really had any problem getting, a good time. But again, remember, I'm usually trying to schedule it in, I try to schedule mine in advance. And so it kind of forces me to say, okay, I'm going to take this exam on this date. And of course, sometimes I screw up and I forget. And I did that. I was going to take the DP 200 in November and completely blew off the exam. And I was like, but then again, it depends on how much you've paid for your exam, because I'm an MCT. I don't pay that as much. Like I pay $40 for an exam. So it wasn't the end of the world. I wasn't happy with myself, but it wasn't the end of the world. But you can reschedule up to 24 hours in advance, which I think is pretty flexible.
Jessica, can you only do the exam on a weekday, or can you do it at weekends?
No, you can do it on weekends. You can do it on
Okay.
weekends. I've done them on a Sunday. So,
And I mean,
yeah.
can you sort of half on advance? Do you have to sort of schedule them?
Well, for me, I usually am going a couple months out.
Okay.
But I think, if you schedule, you can get something within a couple of weeks, for sure. For sure. Again, it seems like they've got a pretty good selection of times that are available. And it's a global clock. So, if you wanted to take it at 1 a.m., you could. Or at least I
Okay.
think so. I've never checked that because I'm in bed by 8. So I would never take an exam at 1 a.m. But you get my point.
Yeah.
Okay, so scheduling the exam, you have some technical requirements if you're doing it online. So if you're doing it online, they have software that you have to test ahead of time, because it's required. It's their own software. So, and even if you've loaded it before, because I've taken other exams and I had this, it's an add-in. I don't know what it is. It's a little mini application. Every single time you take it, you have to download that particular application. So when they tell you to test ahead of time, be sure to do that, especially if you've never used it before. I don't tend to worry about that too much, but on the other hand, I almost got burned. Again, I took the DP 500 and my internet was kind of wonky that day. And that process of getting the new application was a little dicey there for a minute. So again, so you also will need an ID with a name that matches your Microsoft account. So I have had friends who, for whatever set of reasons, they have their official like driver's license, but on, their Microsoft paperwork, they go either by one name or something where their name on the account differs from what's like on their it's different from what's on their government ID. And it's a problem. It's an issue. So you need to present either a driver's license or a passport. I think I tried a passport card once, and I don't think they accepted it, which of course they should have, but they didn't. So, again, make sure that, you've got an ID that the name on the ID matches what is on your Microsoft account. You have to have a working camera on your laptop. Hopefully you will not have one that's sitting at the bottom of your screen. When I took the exam in the bathroom, oh my God, I had one of those Dells where the camera was at the bottom of the screen. It was a nightmare. It was a complete nightmare. The proctor was so awful. And she's just like, you can't keep moving the screen. I'm going to invalidate the test if you keep moving. And I'm like, I cannot help it. The thing is sitting on my lap and the camera is at the bottom of the screen. So again, if you can get your camera to be at the top, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. And it does have to work, and it does have to be on the whole time. You need a working microphone and speaker because you have to hear them. And they have to hear you. So you got to have a working, microphone and speaker. And again, be sure to test that test taking software first, because it has to work on your computer. And then what they do is they have you shut down everything else on your computer except that little application. So everything else is closed, you know, no other windows can be open. All right, let's see, now preparing for the exam. Now, some of these things are gonna sound a little crazy, but you know what? It's especially if you're taking it not at a testing facility, but maybe even at a testing facility. So first of all, I know it sounds silly, but get a good night's sleep. You're not going before a judge and jury. You're taking an exam. There's no reason to lose any sleep over it at all. The worst that will happen is it'll be a gap analysis. It won't be a failure. It'll be a gap analysis. Don't eat or drink anything excessive. Obviously, a hangover would be a bad thing. But also, I know it sounds crazy, but don't go out and eat food that's new to you the night before, because I think they've introduced that you are able to take a bathroom break. I have never done that, and I don't even know how that would work with some of the proctors they have. So I think they've introduced that you can do that, but believe me, I do not. I do not, you know, once I'm in the exam, I don't move, I don't shift, I don't do anything. Because otherwise they'll be like, oh, what are you, I don't even know what they would do. So obviously you don't want to have to run to the bathroom. Again, don't drink 3 pots of coffee. That ought to be obvious. You know, don't forget to breathe, especially if you've got test taking anxiety. That shallow breathing that we do can really make it worse. And and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but one of the things that I find, and I'm not a nervous test taker, but you know, of course, you're taking an exam. You feel like, oh, I hope I pass, whatever. At the very beginning of the exam, that's when you're probably the most anxious. So that's when you should really take time to just do some breathing, and don't let that shallow breathing, you know, don't get into that habit, or you will get very, very anxious. So again, just make sure to breathe. Dress comfortably for the room you're taking the test in. Again, they're not tolerant of, oh, I'm cold, I gotta go get a sweater or whatever. So wherever you're gonna be taking it, make sure that you are comfortable, because once you're in front of that screen, you should plan to stay in front of that screen. Like I said, I think they do allow a bathroom break now, but I wouldn't want to try it. I don't even know what that would be like. Okay, so then during the exam, one thing is make sure you manage the exam clock. So, oh, Fernando, you said they told you no? Oh, interesting. I thought they had just didn't. When was that recently, Fernando? Because I thought they announced that they allowed a bathroom break. Oh, a while back. Okay, yeah, don't count on, my word of advice on the bathroom is don't count on it. Okay, don't count on it. Don't go to Dunkin' Donuts and get some huge thing of coffee and, you know, just plan on not needing to use the bathroom. All right, so managing the exam clock. You get 110 minutes. 110 minutes? 100 minutes. I think you get 100 minutes. And the key there, in my opinion, and this is kind of just some of the stuff that I do. Again, obviously everybody has a little difference in how they take tests. Don't get too hung up on one question. If you can't answer the question right away, like you're confident, boom, I know that answer, do the best you can. Put down what you think is the answer and move on. Don't obsess over one question. Really just always be aware of that clock. You know, and they do allow you a watch. Do they allow you a watch? Did I have to take off my watch? But you'd still have a clock on your computer. So again, just, and they do have a little clock at the top of the exam window. So again, just manage the exam clock. Do not get stressed and hung up over a single question. They don't like it if you cover your mouth. Don't cover your mouth. Like I like to do this. That was not good. So you cannot cover your mouth. I don't know why. I guess because I don't know, but they don't like it. Make sure you don't have any interruptions, although apparently poodles are okay, but I was kind of surprised actually. don't wiggle around. They don't like it. What I do is once they have authenticated you, before they release the test, you have to sit there. And sometimes you sit there for like 10 or 15 minutes. I don't move. I just sit and stare at the camera. I don't want them to say, oh, you did this or you did that. And the whole exam, I don't move. I just sit stock still and take the exam. Again, and a lot of it is depending on the proctor that you're going to get. I've had some proctors that were much more laid back, and I've had some that were just nightmarish. You are not allowed to read the questions, even silently. So if you're a reader, yeah, there you go. Somebody else said that, Fernando. Yep, exactly. If you're not allowed to read that. If you're a reader like me, where, you know, I talk to myself and I have to be really, really careful. You can't do it. You have to be silent the whole time. You can't move your lips. You know that song, Meghan Trainor, if I see your lips, I know you're lying. If your lips are moving, that's just like, that's kind of their thing. So no, can't do that. Yeah. Oh, nice,
So
Sheila.
Sheila,
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons you said you went to the testing center, right? Because inside there,
Yeah,
Um,
at least I could move my lips. I didn't even have to say it out loud, but I could at least almost just whisper, breathe it, and that helped me.
if
Yeah.
you're in a room by yourself, are you able to stand up at all or anything at the testing center?
There were, I don't remember. I don't remember the need to have to, but there were probably if you're by yourself, there were maybe like 4 people in the test room, but we were really spread
Oh,
out.
okay. Gotcha.
And we all had like our own cubicle, you know, like a wall, separated people, like, you know, a little cubicle wall. So it was private, but people were in there testing for all sorts of different things, you know, like an
Gotcha.
insurance exam or other,
Right.
you know, other types. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it, Kevin. I wouldn't count on being able to move. I mean, great if you can, but again, especially if you're taking it online. I just have found the path of least resistance is just knowing. Oh, no, absolutely, Fernando. I'm not saying you don't read the question. Hold the boat on that one, Fernando. I'm getting there because you absolutely read the question. I'm just saying they don't allow you to read it out loud. Okay, so if you're a person who, you know, like me, talks to yourself, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So, and Jeremy, I don't know about all the exams. I feel like every exam I've taken has been 100 minutes. But to be fair, some of them, like when I took the office exams a long time ago, those were like, some of those were only 60 minutes. So I think it depends on the exam, maybe. But like the DP 500, I think was 100 minutes, but I never take 100 minutes. So, you know, but
And
I guess
think
you'd have to
that-
look at each exam.
Right. I think each exam's outline tells you how long it has.
Yeah. All the ones I've taken have been 100, except the office exams, which were like 60 minutes. Okay. Don't plan on drinking and eating during the exam. One time I took in a Diet Pepsi and they were like, okay, you got to hold up the bottle. They had to look at the bottle from all these angles. So, you know, again, I solved that. I don't take anything in there. It depends. I love that. Oh, Kevin is in the it depends jar. All right. So the format itself, I talked about the structure is 100 minutes, and this is just taking from from the website 40 to 60 questions. It is divided into sections, so I'm going to talk about that now. So these are all the different types of questions you can get. So you can get a case study, and a case study is you read. They give you a description. It's quite usually pretty elaborate. They'll say, okay, this is the current environment. This is what they, you know, what the mythical company wants to do. And here they can, you know, then they give you things that they want to accomplish. And then you're supposed to answer questions about the specific situation. Case studies are self-contained. They are in the exam. When you're in the case study, you can flip back and forth between like the description, the goals, and the proposed solutions. But after you're finished the case study, then you're done. You cannot go back and look at it. So one thing I will say about case studies, and to your point, Fernando, I am a very good test taker. That does not mean that I know everything on the exams. That's not what I mean. I mean, I don't get rattled, and I read everything very, very carefully. So like, for example, with a case study, you read the description of the environment, then you read all that stuff there, about what they want to accomplish and what the proposed solutions are. Then when I'm sort of answering the questions about the proposed solutions, I go back and read everything again. A lot of times there are clues and hints embedded in the case study descriptions. So I highly, highly recommend take your time. That's where the breathing part comes in, and read the descriptions over and over again, because again, you're going to find a lot of times some of the answers you're looking for are built into the description. And then Eamon, yeah, you can't take notes anywhere. Okay. So, Sheila, it says that, in the testing facility, they give you a little dry erase. Yeah. If you're taking it online, nope. You're just looking at your screen and answering. So when you get the case studies, just know that you're not going to be able to go back and look at those later. So take your time, read everything very, very carefully, and then go back after you've read it and, you've got the questions that you're answering, and go back and look at the description, because a lot of times there are clues embedded in the descriptions. Okay, then there's what I call drag and stack. They call them drag and drop, but it's a question where they'll say something like, hey, you need to set up, I'm just going to make something up. You need to set up a scheduled refresh. So, what 3 things do you have to do? And you drag over, out of maybe a list of 5, you drag over 3 of the things that you need. Okay. So that's drag and stack. Fill in the blank. So again, that's they'll give you a question with a blank in it. It's sort of like Mad Libs for Power BI, if anybody grew up with Mad Libs. And then you get an answer, and you have to, you can pick from like 3 or 4 answers. So it's a kind of a multiple choice. Then there's a true multiple choice, and there's also problem solution. So this one I think is interesting, because it's kind of like a case study, but what they do is they say, someone's, you have a user who's come to you and they've said that their report is slow, and you go in and you do X, Y, or Z, whatever it is. Will this solve the problem? Yes or no? And the thing about those is that you'll get repeated questions about the same problem. And so you may be presented with 2 or 3 answers that could solve the problem. One of the things I always tell people is don't try to game it. Like, don't say, okay, well, the last one was wrong or didn't solve it, so this one has to be right. You can't play that game. You have to kind of just take each one individually and look at it and go, does that solve the problem? And again, I have found, go back and read the problem statement very, very carefully, because a lot of times the answers are there even in the way they've written the problem. When you're not in the case studies, you can mark something for review. So what I do is I go in and if I know the answer, I answer right away and I move on. I don't spend any time. If I don't know the answer, but I'm I feel okay about, I'm not 100%, but like maybe I'm 75%. What I'll do is I will make my best answer and mark it for review, because what I have found is, especially at the very beginning of the test, when you are naturally a little more nervous, especially if you get thrown a question that you're like, I don't know it. I'm a failure. I can't take this exam. If that happens at the beginning, then you're kind of like thrown off your rhythm. But what you'll find, or at least I find, is once you settle into it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I know that answer. And what usually happens to me is at the beginning, I'll mark things for review. And then as you go along and you answer other questions, just the way those other questions are written, sometimes will give you the answer to something that maybe you weren't completely clear on, or just remind you of something you already knew. So I will mark something for review, and then at the end, I'll go back through all of those, and I have found that it's pretty common for me to be able to clear most of those out, just because number one, my nerves have settled. Number two, I've got plenty of time, and I am.
I know, it's good.
Oh, Daryl, is that you?
I muted him.
Oh, okay.
You're good.
So it gives you time to settle in and, remind yourself that you do know this stuff. So again, not in the case studies, they're self-contained, but everything else, you can mark it for review and go back later. So, and again, sometimes there'll be questions later on that you're like, oh, that's the answer, and go back and fill it in. So, the other thing and I'm sure most of you know this already, but multiple choice, there's always going to be an answer that's completely wrong. Okay, just completely like out of left field. So you go in and you get rid of that answer, and then you go in and you figure out of the other options there, which ones are most likely and least likely. That's if you don't know the answer, but again, you can increase your odds dramatically of, passing if you just eliminate the clearly wrong things. If you get down to 50%, that's better than, 100%, than having to choose between 4 answers. If you get down to 2, you've got a higher ratio of success there. So again, try to be very logical. And okay, so hold on, Andre, in your opinion, what's the best practice test to take? Well, what did I take? Measure Up. I took a Measure Up test for the PL 100, and I swear to God, there were questions on the exam that were on the practice exam. So the Measure Up exams, I think, are okay. I mean, I can't claim anything for that. And the other thing to answer Anne's question is, there are a lot of people out there, putting out content on how to pass this exam. And I recommend looking at all of it, because everybody's going to have something different. Everybody's going to have a slightly different perspective on it. And you also have to be very aware of your own kind of learning. So for me, I'm a book person, so I like books. But there's YouTube content out there now. Again, I just recommend, sort of taking a wide swath and looking at everything. But again, the exam, if you take your time and you read it, most of the time you're going to be, and you're going to do pretty well. I mean, I can just say that based on my own experience. Okay. So, this is a full spectrum exam. What I mean by that is it does cover the entire Power BI ecosystem. So you're not going to get just, Power BI desktop questions or just Power BI service questions. You're going to get it all. You'll get a little bit of M, you'll get a little DAX. It's not a huge amount, so it's not like, okay, you have to be really, really good at DAX. But you have to recognize a DAX expression. You have to, know some basic DAX. You have to know some basic data modeling concepts. And again, I just think I think it's actually a really good exam for sort of making you feel like sort of the basics about the entire ecosystem. Oh, and look at that. No, Daryl, I don't think there's composite models on it. I haven't looked recently.
There wouldn't be, because it's still a preview feature. Exams
yeah.
never have anything about preview features.
Oh, look at you. Okay, yep. So, and it's also a more advanced topic, and this is
Yeah,
not.
when I looked at the Learn topics over Christmas time, the Microsoft Learn modules, they didn't cover the composite models at all.
No, I think
was,
that might be in the DP 500.
I think it is in the DP 500, and I was surprised. I was amazed as to how much they've taken away from the PL 300 and moved into the DP 500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, they
And-
did.
and
I think the PL 300 is a good generalist level exam.
Yeah,
You know,
and
it's
just to be
not-
clear, the part that's in preview is that the composite models where it's direct query to a Power BI data set. That's
Yeah,
what's still in preview. So if it's going to be composite models, like even in the more advanced one, it's going to be your, import and also direct query to like a SQL database. if it's
yes,
there.
yes, exactly, yes. I know, right? Daryl looks like he's got a lot of, it's a good dinner there. Okay. So here's the topics, and I'm just gonna blast through these topics, but I have made up little sample questions. Okay, so again, these are not representative. I don't remember what the questions were on the exam. If I did, I couldn't share them anyway, but that'll give you a feel for things. So you getting data is, and these are taken directly from, the Microsoft site. So you'll be expected to know things about data sources, storage modes. I do recall a question on import and direct query. So again, it'll be something that you'll need to know about. Different data sources, they want you to know about all the different places you can pull data from. And the parameters one is interesting. So the parameters one, they don't expect you to know how to create a parameter. They just expect you to know how to use a parameter, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it's not, you don't have to know how to create it, but you do have to know what it is and how you use one. So that's that. So here are two sample questions. Again, I've made these up completely. So but like one would be, a user needs to connect to a very large data set in a SQL data warehouse. They don't need to perform any data modeling or transformations to the data. Which data extraction method should they choose? And then, obviously you would say direct query. One thing I will tell you that I experienced when I took the exam the last time was, don't overthink it. Okay, because you could make an argument that, oh, well, wait a minute, maybe they could do import. So again, sometimes you can get yourself tangled up in a knot because you know enough to be dangerous. So I recommend, whatever your first thought is, before you overthink something, try to think through what's your first thought. And again, I just made these questions up just so you can get a kind of a feel. A problem solution type of question would be, you work in a multinational corporation, you've been receiving complaints that the currency figures are appearing incorrectly in other countries who view your reports. You change the data type to fixed decimal using locale. Does this resolve the issue? So that would be the kind of thing. And Amen, live connection. Did I get that wrong? Is that not called live connection when you go to Power BI data set in the service? Is that called live connection?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So again, don't get
It's
hung up on
something you
these
use,
questions.
Amin.
I just made some of these up to sort of, simulate what you might see. So again, then the next module is preparing the data. So, the Power Query editor, replacing and adding data, combining and deleting data, working with just some data, and loading your queries. Now, the one thing I will say that my memory is that the Power Query editor is more so about getting the data. I do recall some M questions on there. Again, it's nothing that is inordinately difficult, but if you have never looked at the M that is generated in the Power Query editor before you take the exam, you might want to just look at it a little bit, just to know how it's structured and how, you know, how what an M query looks like, because I do recall seeing some questions about those. And Jeremy, I like your technique of reading the questions twice for sure. I don't know that I would try to think of the answer, because you might come into it with more sophistication or more nuance than they're expecting. Okay, so that's what I mean by, if you read a question and then you think, well, you could do it this way, or well, you could do it that way, or it depends, then you might get yourself in a little bit of trouble. So I personally do read the questions, I read the question, read the answers, go back and read the question again, then pick the answer. So again, but it's obviously everybody's got their own techniques. So a sample question here would be, you know, when you filter data in the Power Query editor, you are excluding rows that will not be loaded into the Power BI desktop, true or false? You know, that would be the kind of question that you'll get a few slam dunks. You'll get a few that are like, duh. And my recommendation on those is do those as quickly as possible so you can save time for the ones that that are not slam dunks. And then you'll get one about, you know, you've got a problem. So a query has an error symbol and the error message is data source.error. What tool do you need to use in the Power Query editor to fix the error? And this is one of those where I kind of get myself, I can get tangled up in the answers. So what I would do in this kind of situation is eliminate the, you know, the obvious one. Now, okay, manage parameters is clearly probably not, you know, you would cross that off. But see, then I would be like, oh, advanced editor. Ooh, well, I could go in and edit the advanced editor, but that's where you're getting too complex. You know, you can't overthink things sometimes. So again, you go into the data source settings and you fix, you know, whatever the issue is there. Usually you've moved the file, let's say. Designing the data model is the next one. So you do need to know about data modeling. I will say dimensions and facts, relationships, filter directions, date tables. So in a sample question, user has a visual displaying repeating values. What should he or she do? And this is another one where I would go in and I'd clearly eliminate the ones that are not correct. And then, you know, and the way I wrote that, 3 of them are, you know, obviously not correct, but usually it's going to be 1 or 2 answers that are not correct. And then you filter down to the, you know, to just 2 answers and you pick between them. And a problem solution might be an implicit measure keeps getting altered erroneously, resulting in an inaccurate report. You create an explicit measure and hide the base column. Does this resolve the issue? And I will say to the best of my memory, you don't see the terms implicit and explicit measure on there. So that wording you probably would not see on the exam. Okay, but again, that's the kind of question you would get. You know, this is the problem. You do this. Does it solve the problem? Developing the data model, again, adding data. I do recall a fair number of questions around, you know, creating calculated columns, those kinds of things. So, and of course, security. And so questions here would be, again, this one's kind of a dumb one. I was like, oh, I got to think of questions. But anyway, when you use a field in a hierarchy, the original field is deleted. True or false? Again, probably you wouldn't get anything that simple on the exam, but you never know. Sometimes there are some pretty simple questions. And, you know, then there's some where like this one, if you want to set up row level security to be responsive, you know, you have to be kind of aware of sometimes like this one, you could choose username and you could choose user principal name. So again, that's one where I'd get it down to one of those 2 and then try to think like somebody who's writing a question, they're probably wanting you to pick the most common thing. So again, it would probably be user principal name. Okay, so again, that would be one where I'd be like, maybe I just have to guess between these two. And that's not uncommon to have to do. But again, you increase your odds of being correct by eliminating.
But Jessica,
right.
don't you also have some questions like that where one answer is more correct than the other answer, that the other answer is still correct, but the other one is more correct than the other?
Yes, and that's kind of what I was going for here. But I will say, I don't recall this being an exam where you feel like you're being tricked. Like, I don't think they do a ton of that. There may be a little of it, but I think a lot of times it's also you come into it with more knowledge and you're bringing to it like, well, but if I wanted to do this. So again, sometimes when I find myself doing that, I'm like, okay, back it up. This is intended to be a generalist exam. What are the odds that, you know, that they want you to pick between, you know, two good answers? So
Okay.
yes, I've seen questions like that, but I don't think they're the bulk of the questions. I really don't think it's an exam where they're trying to trick you. And you know, you might see something like that on the DP 500, but not on the PL 300, generally.
Yeah, and I thought their general direction for all their exams, they were trying to get away from the quote unquote tricking you questions, right? I mean, it doesn't mean they always make it perfectly clear.
Right.
But you know, what was talked about recently, or what I thought I heard, you know, back when the pandemic started, was that they were hearing that feedback and trying to stop this feeling that you get tricked.
Yes, Jeremy. So yeah, Jeremy brought up column quality, column distribution, and column profile. Yeah, there are, I remember some things like also on joins. So I have written a book. It's not published yet, which is why I don't, you know, talk about it yet, but it's about the PL 300 exam. And one of the things that I go into is some of those little nitpicky things, like I think they do ask questions on the join types. And so you're right, Jeremy, they do sometimes get into terminology that, you know, you may not have noticed. You use it all the time, but I'm with you. I couldn't tell you which one of those things is the column quality box versus the column distribution box versus, all I know is I go turn them all on, look at them and turn them all off. So you are right about that. They do question you on terminology. And then they do put some DAX in there. So they will put a few. They're not gonna hit you real heavy with DAX. I didn't find. And one thing I do say that they do put into their guide is that they seem to feel like you should know something about statistics. And so what I wrote in my book was basically, okay, so study up on some of those basic statistical concepts, because I mean, to me, it's about visualization, and it's about knowing what kind of visualization you need in what kind of situation. But they do explicitly call that out in, you know, their domains. So I would definitely look at statistical functions, statistical ideas, you know, because I know that's a weak spot for me. And I do remember some questions on that. And I was like, okay, standard deviation, but nothing that is going to swamp you. Okay, so again, if you're weak in that area, it's not the end of the world. So a question might be, oh, I think I already did that one. Oh no, maybe I'd fix, sorry, I think the left one I already did, but anyway, the right one, you might get a fill in the blank. In a visual, you only want to display the total sales for the United States, complete the expression below appropriately, and then you would have to provide the function. So yeah, So there is a little bit of DAX on there. Again, it's not going to kill you, but you do need to know some very basic DAX things. Like they're not going to get into super deep filter context and, row context turning into filter context. I don't recall any of that. But, filling out some basic, filling up some basic fill in the blank, knowing how a calculate is formatted, what the syntax is important. They do have a section on optimizing model performance and using the performance analyzer. They say that's on the exam. So for me, again, just knowing some of the minefields for performance types of issues, I would imagine you'd see a lot of that in the problem and solution area. So a sample question I wrote was, a user has reported their report is very slow. You look at the report and notice they've added a lot of fields to tooltips. You disable most of the tooltips on that page. Does this help solve the problem? Yes or no. So again, their questions are going to be better worded and more accurate than mine are because I wrote these in about, an hour, but they give you a flavor. Multiple choice might be performance of a report that uses direct query can be improved by doing what? And again, don't overthink things, okay? Eliminate the options that are just clearly not the case and try to go with the one that is the most obvious. In this case, if you don't have a compelling reason to use direct query, then use import. Okay, then they have a whole bunch of stuff on reports. Okay, now I will tell you, they do ask questions about accessibility. That's a huge push at Microsoft, and I have a question a little further along about that. But they'll ask you about themes, which I actually kind of thought was silly because, like, okay, themes, but they do ask. Custom visualizations, they do ask about those. And then creating reports, more on creating reports. So here's the one on accessibility. You've been asked to make a Power BI report accessible. What 3 things do you need to do? And you have to pick out the 3 things. And sometimes you have to put them in the right order. So, one of the questions is, types of questions is that drag and stack. So put them, pick the things that you have to do and then put them in the right sequence. And then another one would be you create a drill through, but your users don't seem to be using it. What can you add to the page to make it easier for them to get to the drill through page? And, you can add a button there to do that. So again, these are just questions I've made up. So again, there will be better questions, but this gives you a flavor. Enhancing reports. They talk about, I don't really recall much on this, but that doesn't mean it won't be. Remember, every exam is generated. It's they drop different questions in. So, again, a sample question would be, you need to change a visual so that instead of highlighting the selection, it's filtered. And then you have to pick, which feature you would use. You want to create a clear drill down path so users can create accurate visuals. What should you do? Again, these are just ideas of things that you might see on the exam. Identify patterns and trends. This was the one that I felt like they put a lot of emphasis on in the domain descriptions. And, the only thing I can tell you is, okay, really forecasting, I guess just get familiar with the forecasting feature, and it's only available on a couple of visuals. So, again, they ask about this. So it's, for me, I would have to, this is where I'd have to put my efforts, is in this area, to make sure I understand some of those concepts. And again, sample questions. You need to create a visual that shows the following trend lines, average, min, max lines. Which of these visuals can you use? And you can pick 3. Which of these is not an AI visualization? They love those AI visualizations. So just be aware, they love those. All right, managing files and data sets. Okay, so again, you do need to know a little bit about, you don't have to be at an admin level for the exam, but you need to know some basics about, you know, building and sharing permissions and things like that. What a gateway is, you don't have to, you don't have to build one, you don't have to know more than that, but you do have to know that such a thing exists. I don't know why groups, bins, and clusters is on there. I think that's an error, so ignore that last line. Yeah, it is an error. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll have to fix that for next time. So again,
It doesn't,
need-
you don't think it asks about the group function? Group spins and I don't know.
no, I
clusters,
think
but-
my point, I think all I'm saying is it should have been, it's repeated. They do ask about, they do,
Oh,
they put
okay.
it on the domain. They put it on the domain. I don't recall if there was something on the exam, but there could be. But it was just not on the right, it shouldn't be on this slide. That's all I'm saying.
Gotcha. Sorry.
No, it's my bad. So again, they do ask about security, so it is something that you need to understand, both, you know, setting up the roles and then adding users to those roles. You don't have to be a security expert by any means, but you should expect to see a few questions on security. And then, you know, like you might see a user reports that once they publish the report, the schedule refresh option is grayed out, what needs to be done. And again, usually with those problem solution questions, they're going to give you one that's clearly just silly. And then you're going to pick a process of elimination for me. And then, creating dashboards using the Q&A feature. And then, you know, again, I just made up some questions. A dashboard can be composed of visuals coming from multiple reports. True or false, the Q&A feature must be set up in both the Power BI desktop and in the service. And then the last one I think is managing workspaces. So this one, question was, you know, a user wants to use data sensitivity labels on their report. You investigate and determine the organization does not have this feature in Office 365. You inform the user that you cannot enable data sensitivity labels. Is that true or false? Again, that probably would be more like a problem solution question. But again, they ask a lot of questions like that. Like, okay, users reporting this, you know, you do this to fix it. Does that help? Does that fix the problem? And things like which of the 4 levels of membership can edit any content within the workspace. So again, you will be expected to understand how a workspace works, how it's structured, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that's it. That's all of the questions, and I'm happy to share this deck. Again, don't rely on my questions. I only wanted to put them in there just because I want you to get a flavor for what you'll be facing. The only thing I didn't put in there was a case study, obviously. So, but you know, again, I cannot stress enough, you got this, you do know this stuff, and even if you don't pass that first time, it's not a failure. It is a gap analysis. And all right, so that's it. That's all. Oh, and look at all these wonderful resources they've put out there. So, and there's tons on YouTube, tons on YouTube. People are really getting into this. And you know, so I recommend watching anybody who's put content out there because everybody's going to have a slightly different take and you can benefit from everybody's take. So anyway, so there you go.
Yeah.
That's it.
And at the same time, right, do go ahead and schedule something to give yourself a deadline, because if you don't, you'll watch everybody's content never ending and never take the test. So
Right, and don't be afraid to take it. Just take
Right.
it. Yeah, Jeremy, I have mixed feelings about Microsoft Learn. I do like it. I think one of the advantages of it is that it's constantly updating, when that's good. I have mixed feeling. I'm a book person. So for me, I'm gonna always, I guess it's my age, I don't know, but I'm always gonna default to a book. And then I'm gonna go to YouTube and for specific things that I need. But yeah, I mean, you gotta do what works for your brain. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, the skill pipe books were good. They were never great. I don't think, but they were never intended to be like a comprehensive Bible of things. They were intended to be just an overview. So, you got to find the learning modality. Like, so Sheila, what worked for you? Sheila's still here? Did she leave? No,
I'm
she's
here.
So what methodology did you use did you do primarily books? What did you use?
I was on Rishi's site. Here's the link for Learn Data Insights. And actually, Michelle Hayes, who's part of the Dallas group, she set up like a weekly time for us to, a bunch of us were taking the exam around the same time, and we would go through these quizzes on Rishi's site on Learn Data Insights, and then use those as kind of discussion, prompts. And we met once a week, and so just taking those quizzes, and when you got it wrong, trying to figure out why you got it wrong. And his site links to all the resources, to the Microsoft resources, so it takes you right to the the actual documentation, to explain the question. So
Right.
so that
Well,
that was
I mean,
really helpful.
I used his stuff for the DP 500 and I did not pass one single one of his quizzes and I passed the exam. So that tells you that he's pretty rigorous.
Yeah.
He's doing a good job. So
No, but I mean, Jessica, Rishi has told me, and I've sort of helped, look through some of the exams, some of the questions, and I know Fernando did as well, is where Rishi has purposely pushed some of the questions, has pushed the boat out on the questions for all of his things, because he said, if you can pass these ones, you should easily pass the exam.
Mhm.
So he hasn't made the questions too easy, thinking,
Right,
these I know, and go and do the exam and then you fail. Whereas he's
Mhm.
pushed it to make it a bit more harder. So
Yep.
you go, okay, if I can get through this, I can get through the exam.
yeah, or I take it and I fail. So the exam will be easier. I mean, honestly, the DP 500, I think, is advanced Power BI. I really do think that. I don't think that's how they're billing it, but I think that's what it is. I think it's advanced Power BI. So
I
It's
agree.
advanced Power BI plus other things, because Azure Purview
Yeah.
is in there a little bit. There's a little bit of Synapse, isn't
Synapse.
there?
There's
And
some
stuff, or
Synapse
at least
as well.
in the outline, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the thing is, Kevin, I know almost nothing about those other topics and I passed, which tells
Yeah.
me it's heavily weighted to Power BI.
Right.
Because I truly do not know much about those other topics. But again, remember, guys, take your time, breathe, and read the questions and manage the exam clock. And, I gotta tell you, I have no doubt that most people in this group and most people I meet and talk to can pass these exams. They're not designed to trick you. They're
So
designed.
if you don't mind, I'm going to share something real quick, because I'm going to ask an interesting question about.
Oh, yeah.
what
Let
changed.
me stop
So
sharing.
go
yeah.
ahead, Sheila, while I'm getting set up here.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, you've inspired me, Jessica, so I'll get my exam scheduled.
Yeah, do it. You know what?
Right.
Just do it. It's just a gap analysis. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's not anything else. Oh, look at that.
So he asked what was changing, and I really didn't know. But there's let me go back to how you can get to this. If you go to the PL 300 homepage, there's a lot of study material out here.
Yeah.
As well as, go through these things. Definitely go through all of this stuff. I
Yeah.
think even if you go through everything else, I think I went through this just prior to taking my exam, and I found some things that were really helpful.
Mhm.
But a lot of these things are new that I haven't seen before in this study guide here.
Yeah, I haven't seen that before.
Yeah. And on the study guide, it has this change log. It talks about, so I would assume that anybody here that hasn't scheduled, you're probably going to go afterwards, after January 31st of this month. So you could see, you know, a couple little, let's see, audience profile.
Yeah, so that
Oh,
means it's a
okay, this
major
audience
change.
profile,
Yeah.
what it is and what they're saying it was percent of the exam increased.
Yeah, it looks like they've emphasized the Power Query editor a little more, it looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then let's see.
This next one, to model the data, was been decreased.
Oh, interesting. So they've made that minor. Wow.
Develop a data model has been removed.
Wow. I wouldn't have taken those out, but
I
I know,
know.
that's interesting.
I know, but you know what? Those are hard concepts. Those are hard.
My guess is that I mean, they have both of them in that thing called design and implement the data model. But it's less content, but it's the same coverage, just less of it. That's what it looks like.
What I thought was interesting was dashboards is removed.
I
Oh.
reckon because they're trying to push us for metrics.
Yeah. No,
you know what?
inside baseball, but I have a feeling dashboards will continue to be emphasized less and less, even though nobody uses them.
But you know what? If you scroll down, let's see, wait a minute. Create manage workspace to identify patterns. Oh, okay. So they've got identify patterns and trends major. So major changes there. So again, that was the one that I found, you know, again, if I have a weak spot, that's it. So like that key influencers visual, don't even talk to me about it. I don't understand it.
I think, you know, what you've also got to be careful, Kevin, just scroll up a little bit there, if you can. Just up to the last one. That last entry there is where they're talking about create and manage workspaces, where they're saying a major change there is what could be the case as well as, and I've kept a track of these change logs through time, and it's very likely that for example, they most probably are going to be including like workspace apps and things like that, where you've got audiences now.
Yeah.
So that's why they're talking about a major change, is because that's now being incorporated.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me page down to, because they should, oh, I guess they only have skills measured prior. I thought they would have had another section of skills measured after.
Yeah, there normally is another one that comes up on there.
Well,
Yeah,
it looks like they haven't. It looks like they haven't adopted it. They haven't adapted it yet.
Yeah.
But you know what? I mean, the bottom line is, you know, there will be things in there that, you know, you don't know the answer to, but a lot of times just by looking at the rest of the questions, you can pick up things that you didn't know the answer to. So again, I just encourage everybody to do it. It's not, you are not failing. You are doing a gap analysis. So, and you know, that's the other thing. You know, in my book, I say, you know, don't over celebrate a pass. Like when I passed DP 500, well, I was thrilled, but that doesn't mean I'm going to teach the DP 500. I am not qualified to teach the DP 500. There's way too much on there that I don't understand. So just because you can pass it doesn't mean you necessarily understand it. So again, but anybody can do it. Everybody can do it.
Hey, Jessica, I heard too in a few presentations that not all of the questions are actually scored, that like Microsoft actually tests questions and the effectiveness of questions. So there may be some questions that they're floating
Yes.
out there to see how people respond.
Yeah, I'm sure they have that, yes. And Jeremy, you're saying I'm instructing a 3-day PL 300? So you're teaching it?
Yeah, I teach with learning training. And
Oh,
then
all right. Well, you
so
know
it's
what?
a 3-day
Definitely
training. It's helpful.
connect with me, Jeremy. I'd be very happy to, I've taught PL 300 now. I don't know how many times. And I definitely have, things I do. Or if you're interested, if you're not interested, don't worry about it. I will not take it any kind of way. So,
Sure.
but anyway, let me
Thanks.
get you back over to Kevin, because it's 7:23 here, and I know it's 7:23 in Dallas too, but it's past my bedtime, people. It is past my bedtime. So,
Past my dinner time.
oh my goodness.
I'm
But
gonna
yeah,
go ahead and stop the recording.
all right. Bye, everybody. So good